everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new, my name is Jennifer. Welcome. Today I want to talk about the topic of books set in the past. I like to talk about some non-traditional books that aren't necessarily historical fiction. I do have one exception, a historical fiction book that I highly recommend and an author that I highly recommend, but otherwise the other 5 books that I want to talk about are either set in the past or take place in partially during the past, like dual timeline. So I want to share some of these recommendations for books set in the past because I don't consider myself necessarily a traditional historical fiction reader. I'm slowly getting into them, and so here are some books that I have found that I've really enjoyed that have elements in the past or take place in the past. And so the first one I want to talk about is called The Midnight Library by Haig. This book was very good. I listened to it on audio, so I'd actually recommend the audiobook as well as reading it physically. This is a kind of a non-traditional set in the past book, in that the person that is the main character in this story finds themselves waking up into a library. And so this is kind of an in-between space between going on to heaven to hell or going back to their real life. And they have a decision to make. Do they want to, what they want to do with their life? Do they want to move on? Do they want to go back to their real life? And so to help them make the decision, there are books and books upon books in this library, and each one is a different possible life scenario. And the main character needs to go into the stories and leave where they take place and where they leave off in this story. And based on a different kind of decision, a different outcome can happen. And so this person learns more and more about their life and their choices and what they have to offer life. And so it's a very compelling read, very interesting read. And so, set in the past and that, previous lives or possible lives and things like that. It's a good story. If you really think that would be a great one, if you already read the Midnight Library, Matt Haig is coming out with The Midnight Train, which is going to follow a different character, but a similar scenario, and that they have some life stories to look at and take place in on a train this time instead of a library. And so that book is coming out in May, so just here in a couple months. And so hopefully that sounds like a very interesting read to me, something kind of set in the past, but it's kind of a play on that twist. And so that is one I definitely recommend. Then moving on to one that I have physically here, it is a horror novel, but by Grady Hendrix, is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, but it's set during the 1970s, 60s, 70s, and so 70. Summer of 1970, and it was right on the borderline. And so, but this one is about following one young girl, and her the teenager, and she finds herself pregnant during the 70s. And so her family sends her off to this home for girls. And so until she has her child and gives it up for adoption, and then she can come back home. And so she becomes friends with other women in the same predicament, in the same house as them, and how they began together to find power through witchcraft and sharing their emotions. And so it is a really compelling read, good read. It's set in the past, but not traditionally, and that it is a horror novel in witchcraft. And so it does have a little bit of gore in it, not much, but it's not body horror. Well, kind of is. Not to give anything away. And so I would recommend Grady Hendrix, and as a non-traditional historical fiction, and that is set in the 70s. And so, and the Grady Hendrix does explain why he's writing this type of novel from his male perspective. And so, and why he's interested in telling this particular story. And so this is one of the first ones of horror books that I've read. And so I would highly recommend this one if you have not checked it out already. And so moving on to another one that I don't currently have, and it's called The Haunting of Velkwook by Gwendolyn and Kriste. And so this one was also another horror novel, but there is a neighborhood that is stuck in the past, and that only those that left it, the 3 women that left the neighborhood, are able to go back into it. And do they want to? What does that mean? And so, yeah, it's a very like family drama, but horror related kind of story. And it's like you said, that neighborhood is stuck in the past. And so what does that mean and everything like that. So it's very interesting read for me. It brought up some emotions, and so brought up some great things. If it makes me feel things, I really did truly enjoy that kind of story. And so that would highly be another one that I'd recommend. And check out maybe some trigger warnings if you have any on that particular topic or book. And so that is another one that I recommend that is kind of stuck in the past, but it's kind of non-traditionally not historical fiction. And so kind of interesting take on things. And then moving on to the next book that I have, Physically, in the 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I recently just finished this one and highly recommend it. I actually gave it 5 stars. It is a romance novel, but as the title says, there is time jumping between 7 years in the past and in the future. And so that's where the past plays into this, and how a romance can happen based off of the year differences and the apartment that they live in that 7-year difference. And so it is very cute, very funny. I like the writing of this author. It was a quick read for me, which I also enjoy. It also made me feel things, right? It felt real. It felt like something could actually truly happen. And so I do enjoy that element, that it is when books are possible, when they tell a story that I think could actually be real, but isn't quite. I do enjoy that piece of it as well. So I'd recommend this one as another introduction to books set in the past for sure. And then the next one that I recommend is The 7 Year Slip by Evelyn Hugo. This one is also by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It is also a one that is kind of told to a reporter, and why this famous a famous actress, and so why she chose this specific reporter. And then it's told based off of each of the 7 different husbands, and it's broken down by each of the 7 husbands into different stories. And so this one is kind of so set in the past, but it's told to this reporter. And so, what does that mean, and how the relationship builds throughout the story. This was very good. This is one of the very first books I read when I got back into reading, and really compelled me to know that I love a good story, something that brings emotion and something that makes you connected to the characters. So I'd also highly recommend this one if you have not checked it out, but as a good introduction to some historical elements. But then last but not least, this is an actual true historical fiction, What She Left Behind by Ellen Marie Wiseman. This was a surprise in knowing this is dual timeline, set in the past and set in the future. So it's set during the 1930s and also present day. And so it is dual timelines. So I did get some modern day and some in the past, but it's traditionally listed as historical fiction. But the author just writes things so well, and you get so invested in both timelines, which sometimes you're only interested in one and want to get back to it. But no, I am very interested in both timelines from this author. I'm very excited to read more by this author for sure. And so if you have not checked out this author, it would be a great introduction to historical fiction. And it is very compelling, and it has a great story to tell, great emotions, and you just get connected and you want to just keep reading, which is great. I have read this one physically, but I also read The Lost Girls of Willowbrook, but I listened to that one on audio, which was very good. And so I'd recommend audio and also physical reads by this author. If you have not, I would check out this one, or The Lost Girls of Willowbrook is probably her most well-known as well. And I have The Lies They Told Us on my actual 5-star predictions. And so hopefully I get to that one next in my lineup of books. But yeah, so I'm kind of hoping to maybe read this author down to 0. And so this is a great tell that it's historical fiction, and I still really enjoy it. And so hopefully that was some great ideas or suggestions for books set in the past that you might necessarily pick up because they maybe have some past elements to them. Hopefully this gives you some good recommendations for some things to read, or hopefully compel you to read maybe historical fiction in this month. And so thank you for watching. If you want to share a historical fiction book or something set in the past that you think I would love to read, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Or if you've read any of the books I just mentioned today and want to tell me your ratings. If you loved them, hated them, disliked them, it was just okay. I love to have a conversation down there in the comments with you. If not, let's go ahead and do some kind of emoji. Let's do our two things, something in the past. I don't know if we want to do some kind of time emoji of some kind, a clock, a stopwatch, alarm, or something like that. Something playing with time would be very cool. So hopefully you definitely enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.